But now all of the benches were filled with guests, lords and ladies, burghers and dames. When at least the sheriff himself came with his lady, he riding with stately mien upon his milk-white horse, she upon her brown filly. Upon his head he wore a purple velvet cap, and purple velvet was his robe, all trimmed about with rich ermine. His jerkins and horse were of green sea sage silk, and his shoes of black velvet. The pointed toes fastened to his garters with golden chains. A golden chain hung upon his neck, and at his collar was a great carbuncle set in red gold. His lady was dressed in blue velvet, all trimmed with swan's down. So they made a gallant sight, as they rode along side by side, and all the people shouted from where they crowded across the space from the gentlefolk. So the sheriff and his lady came to their place, where men at arms with hauberk and spear stood about waiting for them. Then, when the sheriff and his dame had sat down, he bade his herald wind upon his silver horn, who thereupon shouted 3 blasts that came echoing cheeringly from the grey walls of Nottingham. Then the archers stepped forth to their place, while all the folks shouted with a mighty voice, each man calling upon his favourite yeoman. Red Cap, cried someone. Crooky Stack, cried another. Hey for William O'Leslie, shouted another yet again, while ladies waved silken scarf to urge each yeoman to do his best. Then the herald stood forth and loudly proclaimed the rules of the game as followed. Shoot each man from yon mark, which is 70 yards, and 10 from the target. 1 arrow soothned each man first. All from all the archers shall the 10 that soothned the fairest staff be chosen for to shoot again. 2 arrows soothned each man of these 10, then shall the 3 that shot the fairest staff be chosen for the shoot again. 3 arrows soothned each man of those 3, and to him that soothned the fairest staff shall the prize be given. Then the sheriff leaned forward, looking keenly among the peers of archers to find whether Robin Hood was among them. But none one was there, clad in Lincoln green such as was worn by Robin and his band. Nevertheless, said the sheriff to himself, he may still be there, and I miss him among the crowd of other men. But let me see when but 10 men shot, for I wot he will be among the 10, or I know him not. And now the archers shot, each man in turn, and the good folk never saw such archery as was done that day. 6 arrows were within the clutch, 4 within the black, and only 2 smoothed the outer ring, so that when the last arrow sped and struck the target, all the people shouted aloud, for it was noble shooting. And now but 10 men were left of all of those that had shot before, and of these 10, 6 were famous throughout the land, and most of the folks gathered there knew them. These 6 men were Gilbert o' the Red Cap, Adam o' the Dell, Dixon Cruikshank, William O'Leslie, Hubert O'Cloud, and Swithinmore Hertford. 2 other men were yeomen of merry Yorkshire. Another was a tall stranger in blue, who said he had come from London town, and that the last was a targeted stranger in scarlet, who wore a patch over the one eye. Now, quoth the sheriff to a man at arms who stood near him, seest thou Robin Hood among those 10 men? Nay, That do I not, your worship, answered the man. 6 of them I know right well. Of those Yorkshire men, one is too tall, and the other 2 short for that bold knife. Robin's bread is yellow as gold, while yon targeted beggars in scarlet has a bread of brown, besides being blind on one eye. As for the strange in blue, Robin's shoulders, I ween, are 3 inches broader than this. Then, quoth the sheriff, smithed his tide angrily, yon knave is a coward as well as a roach, and darest not to show his face among good men and true. Then, after they had rested a short time, those 10 men stepped forth to shoot again. Each man shot 2 arrows, and as they shot, not a word was spoken, but all the crowd watched with scarcely a breath of sound. But when the last had shot his arrow, another great shout arose, while many cast their caps aloft to joy of such marvellous shooting. Now, by our gracious lady fair, quoth old Sir Amaze o' the Dell, who, both with 80 years and more, sat near the sheriff. Neither saw I such archery in all my life before, yet have I seen the best hands at the long bow for 80 years and more. And now but 3 men were left of all those who had shot before. One was Gil o' the Redcap, one the tagged stranger in scarlet, and one Adam o' the Dell of Tamworth town. Then all the people called aloud, some crying, "Ho, for Gilbert o' the Redcap," and some, "Hey, for stout Adam o' Tamworth," but not a single man in the crowd called upon the stranger in scarlet. "Now, stout thou well, Gilbert," cried the sheriff, "and if thine be the best staff, 50 bold silver pennies will I give to thee besides the price." "Truly I will do my best," quoth Gilbert right stoutly. "A man cannot do aught but his best, but that will I strive to do this day." So saying, he drew forth a fair smoothed arrow with a broad feather, and fitted it deftly into the strings. Then, drawing his bow with care, he spat the staff. Straight flew the arrow, and lit fairly in the cloud, fingers beneath from the centre. Gilbert, gruff all the crowd, and "Now by my faith," cried the sheriff, smithing his hands together, "that is a shrewd shot." Then the tattered stranger stepped forth, and all the people laughed they saw the yellow patch that showed beneath his arm when he raised his elbow to shoot, and also to see him aim with but one eye. He drew the good yellow bow quickly and quickly loosened the staff. So short was the time that no man could draw a breath betwixt the drawing and the shooting. Yet his arrow lodged nearer to the centre than the other by the twice of the length of a barley-corn. "Now by all the saints in paradise," cried Sheriff, "that is a lovely staff in very truth." Then Adam o' the Dell shot, carefully and cautiously, and his arrow lodged close beside the stranger's. Then after the short space, they all 3 shot again, and once more each arrow lodged within the cloud, but this time Adam o' the Dell was farthest from the centre, and again the targeted stranger's shot was the best. Then, after another time of rest, they all shot for the 3rd time. This time Gilbert took great heed to his aim, keenly measuring the distance and shooting with shrewdest care. Straight flew the arrow, and all shouted till the very flags were waved in the breeze, stuck with the sound, and the rocks and dews flew clamouring about the roofs of the old grey tower, for the stuff was locked close beside the spot that marked the very centre. "Well done, Gilbert," cried the sheriff righteously. "Fain am I to believe the prize thine, and right fairly won. Now thou ranger's knave, let me see thee shoot a better staff than that." Naught spake the stranger, but took his place while all was hustled, and no one spoke or even seemed to breathe, so gathered was the silence for wonder what he would do. Meanwhile, also quite still stood the stranger, holding his bow in his hand, while one could count 5. Then he drew his truly yew, holding it drawn but a moment, then loosened the string. Straight flew the arrow, and so true that it smoothed the grey goose feathers from the Gilbert's staff, which fell fluttering through the sunlit air as the stranger's arrows locked close beside of his the red cap, and in the very centre. No one spoke a word for a while, and no one shouted, but each man looked into his neighbour's face amazingly. "Nay," quoth old Adam o' the Dell presently, drawing a long breath and shaking his head as he spoke. "2 years and more have I shot shaft, and maybe not all time bad, but I should no more this day. For no man can match with yon stranger, whomsoever he may be." Then he thrust his staff to his quiver rattling, and unstrung his bow without another word.